back, everybody, to this shipper update. I'm Zach Strickland here with lead economist Anthony Smith. And Anthony Smith, not a super active week in the macroeconomic release section, but that doesn't mean there's not anything going on, right?
That's right. And so when we have these instances, I am a little bit excited because, of course, I would want some new news, but this gives us an opportunity to dive into some of the trends and some of those headline reports. And so, of course, I got to kick it off with some flatbed activities. Zach, what else would I talk about?
Right.
So we're looking at, of course, in the green line, our flatbed outbound tender rejection index. And in the blue line, we have, of course, industrial production. Love looking at these two in a great relationship. Industrial production definitely going to be indicative of a lot of manufacturing and upstream activity. So when we look at the two, it really makes a lot of sense that the two really have a close correlation when flatbed outbound tender rejection index is tight and the capacity is lowering and capacity is getting tighter. A lot of directions here this morning. You really see the two go up coincidingly. So the thing that really kind of sticks out for me is some of the underlying trends in this most recent report. So of course, if you saw the headline number, it increased 1.4% on a month-over-month basis, but it doesn't really quite tell you what increased where. And so one of the things that really had an outstanding impact in this most recent release was utilities. And Zach, utilities makes up a smaller portion of the industrial production. Most of it is manufacturing, but utilities are going to be a little bit less, I think, 30%, even less than that, maybe closer to 20, 25. So we're looking at utilities playing a much smaller role in overall industrial production, but it increased 9.9% over the last month. So if we go into our next chart here, we can see that overwhelmingly, the pattern looks exactly the same for manufacturing. Manufacturing actually increased, I believe it was 0.2% on a month-to-month basis. So still significant, still meaningful. This is for machinery right here. So this is definitely one that's going to be outstanding, that's going to have a pretty significant impact for overall industrial production and manufacturing. So it goes into different subsectors, different components and different subcomponents. Machinery definitely going to be one that's going to have a really big impact for a lot of that flatbed construction or flatbed capacity that's getting tighter right now.
Yeah, and you're talking about the breakdown of the industrial production. I love it when things get kind of broken apart. The aggregate numbers, of course, extremely useful. Yeah. But the to really get into the details, like when you're talking about manufacturing, only up 0.2%. And that's. I think when people hear industrial production, they think, oh, we're manufacturing, we're producing a bunch of stuff. But that's really fascinating about what you said about the utility sector. So kind of, what do you mean when you say, like, okay, the utilities increased?
So mining is going to be a form of utilities as well when you're looking at energy usage, things like that. If we go into our next chart here, I think we have a utilities chart. You can see the pattern is nowhere near where we were for the other charts for machinery, for overall industrial production.
Really volatile.
Very volatile and much smaller component, but when it spikes, it's very impactful. And we can really attribute this most recent uptick here and the cold weather that we saw in January that really had an impact on more utilities being used throughout the month. And so when we see some of those weather events, this is something that's going to spike and increase on a month-to-month basis over the same time frame.
Yeah, but this wasn't necessarily a historic, winter. It wasn't like super cold. So was there anything that you can tell? I mean, look at right here. I mean, back last year, this was when the big Texas freeze happened, and we have surpassed that even. So, I mean, I know that there were some power plants shut down for this, which might have muted this a little bit, but what do you know of any specific events that might?
No specific events right now that's being cited just all across the U.S. really. And so I know when we had the Texas freeze for sure, it was like some plants shut down, Texas just out of commission. So I think this was just more so widespread. And of course, you have to look at prices increases as well. That's also going to play a role here and to the overall utility usage because those energy prices are not coming down, it seems like, and those are getting kind of sticky. Moving into our next chart here, we also have housing starts. And of course, housing starts going to be another one that's near and dear to my heart. We're going to jump into some of the trends that we've seen in this one, of course, in our next shipper update. But a little sneak peek, a little preview. We saw an increase for permits, but a downward movement of over 4% on a month-to-month basis for housing starts. That's not to say that housing starts is weakening, but there is a lot going on underneath this actual release here. There's still a lot of backlogs building up, Zach. It's like every single industry is like copy and paste almost with manufacturing, with housing, with e-commerce, backlogs, heightened demand, and we can't get it there fast enough or can't build it fast enough. But Zach, I even have a potential hot take around housing starts when we come back to our next shipper update, but definitely one that I'm going to watch closely because, of course, it's not only going to have the implication for a flatbed as those building product materials get moved around the country, but also downstream impacts as well as those consumers buy new furniture and appliances to fill up those homes.
Yeah, I think one of the things, it's really hard to kind of derive demand side indicators from some of these numbers now because, like you said, these backlogs are kind of muting their ability to be fulfilled. Right. So it's kind of like a limitation. It's interesting to watch play out for sure, and I look forward to your hot take on the next one. Well, that'll do it for this shipper update. We'll toss it over to Tony and a surprise guest on the Spot next.